All right, good evening, everybody. It's 5:30, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. First and foremost, thank you and welcome. We're really glad that you could be here, and our apologies that we can't host a meeting in person, so we'll have to settle with the virtual option, but I think it'll work just fine. We had a great meeting earlier this morning, so good opportunity for questions and comments later as we continue along. So for those who I have not yet had the pleasure of meeting, I'm with Big Sky Public Relations, working on behalf of the Montana Department of Transportation. I've been part of the communications team for many different projects in the area. You may have seen us earlier this year at the Kalispell Bypass Open House or working on the Dern and Spring Creek and Batavia projects just up Highway 2. I'm Katie Cleets. I'm the current communications manager and am available to help however I can throughout Foys Lake construction. MDT has hired Big Sky Public Relations to help in a number of different ways, including providing updates during construction, creating press releases for the media, and hosting public meetings such as this one. As I was saying before, normally this meeting would be hosted in person, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we've decided to host a virtual meeting. Also with us on this call is Becca McLean, our newest account executive on the Big Sky PR team. She is actually going to be taking over the project in the coming weeks and is attending the open house to learn more about this project as she dives in. We'll share her contact information at the end of this presentation. So you'll likely hear less and less from me and more from her as the project progresses. In addition, we have Beth Kappas, John Schmidt, Bob Vosen, and Drew Fetters, all of MDT. These folks will be your go-to resources for all things Kalispell Bypass and will be overseeing the Foys Lake Road project. Would you all like to say hi and introduce yourselves briefly? We'll start with Beth.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is Beth with MDT, and I work out of the Kalispell office for our alternative contracting group, and I help support the department's design build projects like this one.
Good afternoon. I'm John Schmidt. I'm the Missoula District Construction Engineer. I generally oversee the construction projects in western Montana for the Department of Transportation, and I live in the Flathead Valley.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob Vosen. I'm the District Administrator for the Montana Department of Transportation for the Missoula District, which is the western portion of Montana. I am a resident of the Flathead Valley as well. I have kids that attend Flathead High School. And I just want to thank everybody for taking time out of your schedule to visit with us today. I wish we could be doing this in person as well. But I'm excited just to have the opportunity to share the exciting news of the upcoming project with everyone. Drew?
Good evening. I'm Drew Fetters. I'm going to be the project manager for the Kalispell Bypass for MDT. I also am a resident of the Flathead Valley.
Thank you all. And last but not least, we have representatives from our engineering and construction team. LHC Construction and KLJ Engineering are hard at work finalizing the design for the Foys Lake interchange. KLJ is the lead engineering firm and LHC is the construction team who will be building this finalized design. They're here to explain any of your questions in more detail and share our plans with you. KLJ folks, would you like to share who's on the line? Maybe we can start with Don.
Yes, thank you very much. This is Don Sterno with KLJ. I'm the design manager on behalf of the design build team, working with LHC on the design and coordinating and working with MnDOT, with MDT. Sorry about that, MDT on the design. So I'll be talking a little bit about the roundabouts a little bit later, and also here to answer any questions that you have. So I want to thank everyone for coming this evening, and hopefully we can answer any questions you have. I'll hand it off to Kathy.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Harris. I'm working with Dawn and our team, but I'm leading the environmental efforts. And I'm actually coming from our Helena office, but I've spent quite a few years on this Kalispell Bypass project and really pleased to be at this meeting and look forward to visiting with you. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Joe DeVore with KLJ out of St. Paul, and I'm one of the staff from KLJ working with the traffic engineering on the project. And I've been a part of the airport road project as well. So I look forward to seeing some similar names in the attendees list that I've met with on that project.
Thanks, KLJ. And I believe we have Jim from LHC. Jim, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, thanks, Katie, and hi, everybody. I'm Jim Mitchell, and I'm part of the management team for the local LHC construction group. And as Katie said, we'll be the contractor and start in charge of construction for the project. And first off, on behalf of LHC, I really want to thank everyone for taking the time to participate in this open house. Like Bob, I wish we could be having this in person. I've probably spoke with a lot of you on other projects, but we are, as a group, a team, committed to keeping the public informed. So we will be sure to do that, and hopefully we can meet in person in the near future with some more of these. And I also want to mention how excited LHC is to be able to bring this project to the community. Our goal is to have the same success that we had on the 4-lane build of the north half of the bypass that we constructed. So it's really important to us, and we're excited. And on a personal note, this project's especially near and dear to me. In my past life as an MDT manager, I was involved in the planning and construction of the bypass for over 20 years. So with that long-winded introduction, I'll turn it back to Katie, and thank you all again.
Thanks, Jim. That was great. And thank you, everybody else. So again, I'm Katie, and I've historically served as a communications manager for the Foys Lake Road project. My colleague, Becca McLean, is on the line and will ultimately be taking over the projects in the coming weeks. We're here to help answer any questions you might have throughout construction. Both my and Becca's contact information will be shared at the end of the presentation should you ever need to get in touch. As we've already mentioned a few times, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are using Zoom to conduct this meeting. So thank you everyone for your flexibility here. We will be recording this presentation and placing it on the project webpage for viewing after these meetings. While we don't foresee virtual meetings taking the place of our in-person open houses, we do want to make all of the necessary precautions at this time. So thanks again for bearing with us. Of important note, and since we can't be hosting this meeting in person, we will be using the Q&A system to address your questions as cohesively as possible. My colleague Takami is also on the line and will be facilitating having your questions answered. Takami, can you say a quick hello and explain this process to our folks?
You bet. Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. I'm Takami. I'm also with Big Sky Public Relations, and I'll be monitoring the Q&A system throughout the presentation. So as Katie said, at the end of the presentation, we're holding a Q&A session. So if you do have a question at any time while we're talking and showing the slides, please feel free to type it in that Q&A chat box. It looks like 2 chat bubbles, and we'll get your question answered. Our team will answer all these questions at the end. And if there's any questions we aren't able to answer, we'll let you know and just have you leave your contact information with us to get in touch. And you're also welcome to just email or call afterwards if you're not really comfortable using that system too. So thank you, everyone. And with that, we'll have Bob Vosen kick us off. Thanks.
Thanks, Takami. And again, thanks everyone for joining us tonight. MDT is really excited to be moving forward with this project. We understand how important it is to the Flathead Valley and the transportation network in the valley. And I want to make a special thanks to our partners that have helped to deliver the project or to get the project to this point, specifically the city of Kalispell for their hard work in obtaining the build grant, which has brought the funding to allow us to move this project much quicker, move it forward than what we had anticipated, as well as the partners with the city, such as the Kalispell Chamber of Commerce. The Foys Lake Road Highway 93 alternate intersection project, or the bypass project, or the Foys Lake KBP project, it's going by several names out there. The construction will begin in the spring of 21. We can probably expect to see some work taking place this fall with the relocation of some utilities and some other ancillary work, but the bulk of the project will be taking place starting next spring and concluding later next fall. So John Schmidt will get into those details a little bit later. I do want to cover the fact that this is a design build project which is a little different than our traditional design bid build projects. The difference is that we don't have a finalized design yet. MDT contracted with a design team and a construction company teamed up together, in this case, KLJ and LHC, and they will be putting together the final design through the winter so that we're ready to really get into the project construction next spring. Montana Department of Transportation and the design build team will be replacing the existing roundabout at Foys Lake Road with a full interchange. And a full interchange simply means that you can expect to see something similar to what is currently in place at US 2 and at Old Reserve Drive, in that the bypass will go over the top of the surface street, in this case, Foys Lake Road. So again, the bypass will go over the top of Foys Lake Road. Now, and then in this rendering off to the left is a rendering or what is anticipated to be constructed. The picture to the right is the current existing Foys Lake Road. So I know what everybody's thinking at this time, and no, we're not crazy. You're seeing the two roundabouts, and everybody, I'm sure that's causing everybody some pause. So let me dive into this a little bit more. As you can see on the rendering here, this interchange is composed of the following. The Highway 93 bypass, or the Kalispell bypass, goes over the top of Foys Lake Road. Excuse me. So we've always known that the bypass was going to go over or under, but at this point we are able to reveal that the bypass will go over Foys Lake Road. The ramps from this interchange are going to be coming down on either side and accessing roundabouts. There will be a roundabout on either side of the interchange to facilitate traffic moving into both the Foys Lake area and the Kalispell. This is by far the safest intersection option available, and we always prioritize traveler safety. My colleagues will also dive into this discussion a little later in the presentation. But one thing that I do want to point out is that the teardrop shape to these roundabouts allow us better to facilitate Valley View Drive, which is on the lower right-hand corner of this, just to orientate everyone a little bit better. Northbound traffic is off to the left side of the screen, not up in this case. So again, the Kalispell bypass is traveling north and south in this direction, and the city of Kalispell is over here. Foys Lake Road is this leg here. This 5-legged roundabout will much better facilitate the traffic flow than a signal in this location. The signal would have problems with creating a malfunction junction type situation. For those of you familiar with some of the other 5-legged signalized intersections in Montana, there's one in Missoula, there's one in Helena, and they're really, they don't function well, and they have congestion problems. So due to this, this access to Valley View Drive, that really lends itself to the design that you see here. Some other details about this: the two roundabouts will be large. The western roundabout is going to be over 200 foot in diameter. The eastern one is slightly smaller at 160 foot in diameter. And then the other thing that I want to stress here is by removing the Foys Lake, the Kalispell bypass traffic, the through high-speed highway traffic, and getting it on the surface here, off the surface and on this, it's going to greatly reduce the traffic volumes in these roundabouts, which will allow them to function much better. And again, we'll discuss this further later in the presentation. And then the final thing I want to point out is, as you can see on this rendering, Kalispell bypass will be widened to 4 lanes. So there'll be 2 lanes in either direction. And the final thing is the shared use path will continue to be extended and facilitate traffic or pedestrian traffic through the area, in addition to matching the existing sidewalk. These roundabouts, a final piece about the roundabouts, the gray area shown in here, this is a truck apron similar to what you're seeing on the existing roundabouts in the Missoula area. It is different than the roundabouts that are currently in place on the Kalispell bypass, in that the apron has a much more gentle laydown area to get onto the roundabouts, and they're much more truck friendly than the existing roundabout that is in place. And then the final benefit to the roundabouts is the pedestrian safety factor, and they're going to be able to cross one lane of traffic, only having to look in one direction at a time. On the ramps, there's just traffic coming from one side. In these areas, they're guided through with only having to cross one lane, and then there's a refuge location, then they can cross the other lane. So these really facilitate a safe pedestrian experience going through the area. The final thing that I'd like to share at this point, and that will be covered a little bit more in detail, is we currently have the existing shared use path tunnel that goes under the bypass a little further south than what's shown on this image. And a lot of people are parking at the corner of Valley View Drive, and we're going to be able to install a parking area there to try to remove some of the parking that causes congestion at those pinch points on Valley View Drive. So that's an exciting component to allow better access to the shared use path and the shared use, the trail network in the Kalispell area. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Joe with KLJ to do a little bit further delve into the safety of roundabouts.
Bob, this is Don Stern. I'm going to jump in real quick here, and then I'm going to hand it off to Joel. He'll address some more detail because he was the gentleman that did all the analysis and has a great deal of experience on modeling how roundabouts work. And just to kind of feed off of what Bob was talking about on the roundabouts, when we were working on the design of this, working with LHC, because it is a design build project, we looked at different type of intersections. And it came pretty clear to us that the best alternative here is to look at a dog bone type roundabout for many reasons. The main ones are the safety that these roundabouts bring into the intersections, the traditional signalized intersections. There are higher severity rates of accidents if people are running red lights or people aren't paying attention. They come at these intersections at high rates of speed. And especially on the west side, on Foys Lake Road, it's coming from a rural area. So what the roundabouts do, they'll be well lit up, as you see in most of the other roundabouts that you see in the area. They're becoming more and more prevalent in applications like this. For mainly reason, as you can see in front of here, is the fatality reduction of 90%. Serious injury crashes are significantly reduced, and all crashes are reduced. So, and also, as Bob pointed out, the main thing too is that there's a lot of pedestrians and recreational use in this area, and we anticipate that to grow, along with the city's long-range plans of extending the multi-use trail further to the west of the roundabouts. So, as Bob pointed out, the refuge islands where people are crossing just one lane of traffic, and that traffic's coming in from one direction. They're being slowed down before they approach. So if something does happen or a misjudgment, the accidents or any mishaps are much less in severity and minor. But it also provides that needed safety for people crossing the road. Instead of like a traditional signalized intersection, you'd have left turn lanes, through lanes. So you could be crossing 3 to 4 lanes of traffic and trying to get across that looking both ways, and then trying to judge the speed of vehicles becomes very difficult. So the roundabouts really kind of provide a safe means for trying to get pedestrians intermixed in with moving traffic. And as Bob pointed out, majority of the traffic will be going over the top of Foys, and the large percentage of the trucks are going to be staying on the bypass. So there's a tremendously smaller amount of trucks that will be utilizing these roundabouts. And we selected them for not only safety, but also they perform at a higher level of service, less delays on the traffic in through there. And there's several of those are the main reasons why we selected to go with the roundabouts. And I'll hand it off to Joe, and he can address a little bit more regarding safety and signing and how things work in these roundabouts. So here you go, Joe. Thanks.
Thanks, Don. And just to kind of reiterate some of the safety points, we were looking at both an interchange with roundabouts for the ramp intersections as well as signals. And really, as we started to compare both safety, operations, and a lot of the like multimodal aspects that went into selecting these intersections, roundabouts really excelled at meeting all of those criteria going into this decision. So looking at kind of that pedestrian safety, roundabouts really force drivers to decrease their speed going through these intersections. So when we do have those pedestrians or bicyclists crossing on the trail, they're interacting with vehicles that are going a safe speed and really at one lane at a time because of those medians in the roundabouts. You're only conflicting with one vehicle at a time as you cross, and pedestrians do have the right of way at these roundabouts. Going into kind of the traffic portion of it, with the bypass going over the interchange, with our traffic projections for 20 years out to 2040, 2045, we're only seeing about 50% of the existing traffic at the roundabout is going to be going through these future roundabouts. And that's really because we're taking all of that bypass traffic out of the equation by making an interchange. As Don alluded to, 90% of the trucks going through the existing roundabout are going to be staying on the bypass. And the trucks that do get off onto Foys Lake Road are going to have a truck apron that's designed in a way where it's not going to cause load shifting. Like the current, it's going to have less of a grade to that truck apron. So people pulling trailers or semis that do get off on Foys Lake Road will have a much easier time navigating the roundabouts proposed than the existing roundabout. And lastly, I'm just going to reiterate on the severity issue is when you have a traffic signal or a side street stop type intersection, when you have a crash, a vehicle crash, it's a higher percentage chance of a severity to happen than at a roundabout just because of the speed at which those vehicles are interacting with. And that's a big push by MDT to really address that severity issue with this project. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jim to talk a tiny bit more about some of the roundabout design.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I guess I just want to reemphasize, you know, a lot of the considerations that went into choosing this, and safety, of course, being one of the primary considerations, and not only for the vehicle travel, like was pointed out by Don and Joe, but for the other users, the pedestrians, cyclists, joggers, and everybody that's currently using the trails and sidewalks along Foys Lake Road and the bypass. And as an avid cyclist, I know these considerations are important to the community, and in my involvement over the years with the bypass, that's been pointed out by the community that's really, really important. So, you know, like Joe mentioned, you know, splitting the traffic between the roundabouts and the bypass reduces that congestion. Only have to navigate one-way traffic at a time, have refuge areas. But I think the biggest thing I want to point out is the speeds that was mentioned. When we compare it to a traditional signalized intersection, drivers approaching a signalized intersection tend to focus more on the light, even a green light. They're maintaining their speed or even increasing their speed to make sure they get through the light. So it takes their focus away from potential conflicts with other vehicles, or what my emphasis here is the multimodal users, the pedestrians, cyclists. So, and as Joe pointed out, when we do have these conflicts on a signalized intersections, they have the potential to be catastrophic. So kind of in summary on our decision to use this design, a diamond interstate type interchange, provides control at the intersection of the surface road and the ramps, in this case, Foys Road. And that control is typically stop signs, overhead signals, or roundabouts. We need to keep in mind that most interstate interchanges don't deal with the conditions that we see on the Kalispell bypass with the level of non-motorized users, peak hour traffic influxes, residential commuters. So with all these things considered, and the number one goal being taken care of by putting the bypass over the top of Foys so that it truly functions as a bypass, the roundabouts rose to the top as the safest and most efficient way to control the intersection along Foys Lake Road. And we didn't take this lightly. It's not something we're just throwing out there and going to see how it works. We really looked at other intersections, even in Montana, that have a similar design. Van Buren interchange in Missoula, Airway Boulevard interchange in Belgrade. Those all have same type of considerations that we see at the bypass, and they're all functioning great with good comments. And so with that, that's kind of why we chose this design. Safety being the number one priority. And I'll turn it over to John Schmidt with MDT, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about construction timelines and expectations. Thank you again.
Thanks, Jim. As Jim said, I'm John Schmidt, the district construction engineer. And in general, what folks can expect to see, what'll really look like major construction will begin in March of 2021. That's really weather dependent, but early in the spring, with the new road completely open in November of 2021, with some work that has to happen in 2022, some chip sealing and striping, and possibly some seeding. In terms of impacts to local residents, residents will experience construction disturbances, including some driving delays and short interruptions, just due to possibly needing to relocate some utilities and some other things. So generally you'll have normal construction dust and noise that'll be generated during construction, but we are going to do what we can to minimize those. Construction will occur generally during daylight hours, consisting of single lane closures during work hours that'll be controlled by flagging operations to help facilitate traffic through the work zone. There may be some occasional weekend closures with signed detours, and the road will be always reopened during peak traffic hours on the weekdays. So our phases of construction, the initial construction phase will focus on widening the bypass south of Foys Lake Road and building the northbound ramps. Once this is finished, traffic on the bypass will be shifted to the ramps to allow room for the bridge and remaining bypass roadway to be built. The final phase will then be to shift traffic back to the newly constructed 4-lane bypass to allow for completion of the roundabouts on Foys Lake Road. This allows traffic to be maintained on pavement for the majority of the construction in a similar configuration as the existing intersection. So with that, I will turn it over to Beth Kappas, who's going to have a little conversation with us about budget and maintenance.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so changing gears now to talk a little bit more about project finances. The KPB Foys project was awarded to the LHC KLJ Design Build team in the amount of $14.7 million. And as Bob had previously noted, the City of Kalispell actually applied for and received federal build grant funding to cover the majority of the costs for this project, which really allowed us to move this project up on our to-do list and get these improvements to the ground way sooner than we would have otherwise been able to do so. The federal build grant money will cover about $12.7 million in construction costs, and then design fees and the remaining project construction costs will be covered by MDT's National Highways Funding Program, which is primarily made up of federal funds, but there's also a portion of state funds included in that funding source. And then maintenance efforts and costs associated with this new facility will be really similar to what we see for the northern half of the bypass, where we already have the 4 lanes and full interchanges. And as we're working through final design, the project team is certainly being mindful of incorporating materials and details that really reduce long-term maintenance efforts out here. And the selected interchange configuration also has some added maintenance benefits where the use of roundabouts eliminates the annual and long-term maintenance of electrical systems that are used in signalized intersections. So now that we've had a chance to talk a little bit about budget and maintenance, I'll turn it over to Kathy with KLJ to talk about some additional project considerations.
Thanks, Beth. This is Kathy Harris from KLJ, and I'm spearheading up the environmental efforts, which are a little bit twofold. One is to complete an environmental reevaluation, and the other is to get construction permits from our regulatory agencies. The environmental reevaluation is actually a review of the 2006, and this is a long title, but that was the reevaluation for the Kalispell bypass. Again, this 2006 document. What we're doing right now is actually, if you look on the screen, there's a red border around our project limits. And we look at a little wider border than the actual roadway and look at the environmental issues in that area. We're primarily looking to see if it's consistent with what was planned and estimated back in 2006 for environmental impacts. And then we also look and see if there's any updated either environmental regulations or construction areas that might need to be addressed in these areas. I do want to mention that the 4-lane Kalispell bypass and an interchange at this location were actually looked at in the 2006 reevaluation. It was considered where with the Kalispell bypass going up and over. And so there was a large look at the environmental impacts, and many of them were mitigated either through trying to modify the design or to actually do mitigation, okay? That document is pretty key. It's located on the project website if you end up wanting to look back and read it. And there's a link at the end that'll, there's a link at the end of this presentation to get to the project webpage. And in there, if you look under the history heading, you can find this 2006 reevaluation document. So a little more detail if I could. When we look at the environmental issues, we look at both biological and then kind of the social issues. So the biological issues we address are the grasslands, the wetlands, the streams. And so those are looked at to see if we have any impacts, and we will be filling some wetlands. Those will be mitigated in kind. And there's also an additional feature that is being occurred right now. At the north end of that red block, it shows where Ashley Creek currently crosses under the bridge that carries the Kalispell bypass. That's also actually where the bike ped path crosses underneath the bypass. But on the south side of that bridge, or the south side of the stream, the stream bank itself is eroding a bit, and it's just the energy of the water is eating away at the side. So MDT, as part of this job, is going to go in and reestablish that stream bank so it's a little more stable, less erosion. And what that does is it helps keep the water quality in Ashley Creek at the same level or a slightly better level than it is now. That water quality is important for cleanliness. You know, it discharges into the Flathead River eventually, and also for the life, the aquatic activities, if you will, that are within the stream. So water quality is one of the areas we look at. The biological look also includes looking at wildlife. In this area, what we found is as it's gotten more urbanized, there are fewer wildlife activities crossing the roadway. We realize there are some, but from a safety standpoint, if there is a big recordance of crashes where vehicles are swerving or hitting wildlife, we really try to improve that. Or indeed on the maintenance side, if there's a lot of carcasses that end up being found along the roadway, that's identified as a problem area. Honestly, in this area, ranging from Ashley Creek to the south end of our project, there is not a lot of wildlife that has been crossing back and forth. So it is not something that we're going to have to try to treat in here. And that has some benefits which transfer over into the social side. So the social side is how people use this facility. One of the areas that has been mentioned is the pedestrian trail or shared use trail. That will be maintained. You'll be able to travel on it throughout the construction period. Now, there may be days where you have to take a short detour, but for the most part, that trail will be maintained. It will remain on the east side of the bypass and stay in its current location. And it was already described earlier in a previous slide that there will be some additional sidewalks crossing under and through Foys Lake Road to help improve our connections, our pedestrian connections. Now, our project doesn't really go outside of these red borders. So we recognize, you know, there's some gaps in the system, but those are not issues that we can fix with this project. Back to pedestrian and social side, that's the people side. One of the areas that was mentioned earlier, MDT is working in cooperation with other agencies to try to establish a small parking area that would be near the existing pedestrian tunnel that goes underneath the bypass right off Valley View Road. And that's trying to recognize that people are parking there, and we're trying to just find an area to help reduce parking on the roadway. And so that's one of the benefits that we see coming about. Also on the social side, that's where we start looking at traffic operations. So we looked 20 years into the future to look at these roundabouts. We've estimated growth for that long and feel confident that the traffic can be handled by this proposed roadway, along with the 4-lane widening of the Kalispell bypass. When we look at traffic operations and safety, we also look at other traffic impacts, which include traffic noise. Now in 2006, there was a pretty exhaustive noise study done, and certain areas were identified for what we call mitigation, and other areas were not identified because they were not, at that time, they were not reasonable or feasible in accordance with MDT's policy. And again, this is for abating traffic noise. It's not everything, but it does try to look at traffic noise specifically. Now, we're in the process of completing an update to that traffic noise analysis and looking, again, 20 years into the future. At this time, it appears conditions are similar to what we found in 2006. And there are not properties or mitigation measures that we can do, i.e. treat the roadside so that it would be quieter. So right now we don't have any reasonable or feasible ways to mitigate the noise in this corridor. And that means no likely noise improvements. I know that's a concern for a number of people. And part of that, there will be a follow-up meeting to address noise, especially for residents that are very closely associated. And we'll be glad to get into details and specifics with you on that to try to explain what we can and cannot do and why we are unlikely to do any changes from what is out there now. So there's also other environmental impacts that we look at, but those are kind of the big ones that are usually change on a project. So we have looked at wetlands and stream banks, excuse me. We've looked at the social impacts, and now we're going to complete the reevaluation document, and then we'll be seeking permits from the Corps of Engineers and the state agencies that regulate stream beds. So those activities are all occurring this fall, and it all ties in with looking at the environmental impacts of this project and overall balancing them with environmental stewardship, but also with traffic safety. And traffic safety is a predominant mission for MDT. And I think we wanted Bob to speak actually to Vision Zero and how that integrates for us.
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, and I just wanted to take a minute to discuss Vision Zero. Vision Zero is MDT's mission statement, and it's a multi-pronged initiative, and the ultimate goal is to eliminate deaths and serious injuries on Montana's highways. And one of the prongs is having good roads, bridges, and intersections is a key component to safe and efficient travel. Good roads make it easier and safer for the citizens to travel, to do business, visit family members, attend public events, get the kids to school, and all other purposes that you use our roadway network and our other transportation network within not only the Flathead Valley, but statewide. And MDT recognizes that this is one of the Valley's most traveled roads. And so this project and all future bypass projects must align with our Vision Zero goal. And the project team, MDT, KLJ, and LHC, we all strongly believe that this design is the best option to help us achieve our goal. And with that, I will turn it over to Beth so she can discuss public involvement and participation.
Thanks, Bob. As always, MDT welcomes any input and feedback on our project plans. And so as previously noted, the improvements planned at the Foys Lake Road intersection are currently on an accelerated schedule. So the project timeline has been a little bit different from what you might typically see for a project of this nature. So once the city and MDT were notified that build grant funds were awarded to this project, we opted to deliver this project using the design build method. And the design build method is a project delivery system that allows for more overlap in the design and construction phases of a project. So this overlap essentially allows us to speed up project delivery, which is super important in this case because there are timing restrictions associated with the build grant funds. So in essence, we have to use those funds before they expire and are no longer available. And in design build delivery, a contractor and engineer team up to develop a proposed design and cost for completing the project. And so in this case, MDT in partnership with the city went through a very involved procedure to evaluate several proposals and ultimately selected the LHC KLJ design and cost. And that has really been able to demonstrate and represent the best value to the roadway users and taxpayers of Montana. And the interchange configuration that is being implemented, again, this has been kind of discussed from multiple different aspects, but it was selected based on safety, reduced traffic delays, and just overall improved operations. And so again, we certainly welcome any feedback on the improvements that we have planned out here. And I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Katie and Becca now for some more information on how to better stay in touch with us.
Thanks, Beth. Hi, everybody. This is Becca speaking with Big Sky Public Relations. Thanks for being here. Just to piggyback off of what Beth mentioned, us here at Big Sky Public Relations, we are available throughout construction to address any questions or concerns you might have. As you'll see on the screen, you're welcome to email me, Becca at bigskypublicrelations.com, or my colleague, Katie. Her email is katie@bigskypublicrelations.com. You're also more than welcome to call the project hotline listed on the left there during business hours. Happy to chat again and hear feedback and answer questions through that avenue as well. If you'd like to receive a weekly construction update, please email me at the email address listed there, and I'm happy to include you in that. So you, again, as it sounds, get a weekly update as to what's going on. We also encourage you to visit the website linked there on the bottom left to learn more about the project. That's updated regularly, and project brochures, project information will be there each week as construction progresses. So we're going to go ahead and pause here, leave this screen up in case anyone wants to write this information down. But we are going to now transition to the Q&A session. If you have a question about the project, like we said, go ahead and enter that into the Q&A system if you haven't already. And we'll go ahead and use the remaining time to answer those questions. So thanks so much.
All right. My name is Takami again, just to remind you guys, I've been sort of quiet throughout this presentation, but now I'm leading us through the Q&A session. So feel free to use that box and send us all your questions. We did have a bunch come through, so I'd like to just sort of dive in and go down the list. We'll start with Rebecca's question, which was, will the berm sound barrier be addressed? And I know we did touch upon this, but Kathy, if you could address this again and just sort of go over what residents can expect with regard to the sound barrier, that would be great.
Right. And at this time, we have done our draft noise analysis to look and see if the increased traffic has changed the conditions to make this reasonable or feasible in accordance with MDT's noise policy. At this time, it does not appear that any noise mitigation is considered feasible for this project. Now, without getting into a lot of technical details, what I would say is if you want further information, we'd be glad to visit with you individually, especially about your particular situation. And then also there will be a meeting being scheduled shortly to address noise impacts for those type of residences. So to answer the question, it's no additional berm or noise wall is planned.
Great, thank you. Our second question comes from Ginny. I'm going to just read the whole thing. So, the bike path between Highway 2 and Foys Lake Road has been closed for weeks with little or no work being done for long periods of time. Will the bike path from 3 Mile to Airport Road remain open during this project? And what steps are being taken to prioritize bike/pedestrian traffic on this very high use trail? I'd like to go over to John for this one first.
John, if you're trying to speak, you might be muted.
Yep, I hit the extra mute button. I apologize. So the just to address the initial part of the question, the path closure on Highway 2 and Foys Lake Road is actually being done by the city of Kalispell, and that's to facilitate their installation of the sewer and water line that's going through there. And so MDT doesn't have a lot of control over how that work's being done, other than we did have to issue a permit for that work to happen. So we apologize for that, and we will look into why that's been closed for so long. And then the path from 3 Mile Drive to Airport Road remaining open during construction is definitely a priority for the project. Just like Project Detour for vehicular traffic, we would maintain some kind of pedestrian path detour to make sure people are able to bike, walk, jog through the construction zone and stay on the path course. So
Great, thanks, John. All right, our next question comes from Susie, and it is that explanation of what will happen with the bypass traffic while the bridge is being built went really fast. Can you please re-explain more slowly and in more detail, including discussing how long that is expected to take? There obviously could be significant impact there. So John, if you could handle that one, that would be great.
yeah, and if we could go to the next slide there that shows the phases. I'm actually going to turn this question over to Jim Mitchell. He has a better handle on the durations and how long each construction phase will take. So Jim, do you want to speak to this?
Sure, thanks, John. And great question, Susie. So if you see the sheet.
Real quick, I just want to interject and point one thing out that we missed last time through, and that's to help orientate everyone on this slide that north is to the right, not up. That might help people understand what we're looking at. So sorry to interrupt, Jim. I just want to get that clarification out there.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Bob. And going to the right is north. You can see the north arrow up above. So that'd be your north direction, and south going to the left of the page. So what we're going to do is build these northbound off-ramps. You can see the light blue shading. So while traffic is currently going through the roundabout, we will be working on these northbound ramps and this new easterly portion of the dog bone. And so once that is built, we will route traffic down through there, and that roundabout will temporarily act as the roundabout does now. There's some slight modifications we have to make for it to do that. We've designed that so there's very little throwaway once we convert it to the new configuration. But doing that will allow us to construct the bridge without traffic. And also, a lot of this yellow shading going to the left of the page is soft soil areas, and we have to build that embankment and let it settle without getting down into the weeds too much on that geotechnical consideration. There's some settlement that we expect there, so that fill is going to sit in place for approximately 2.5 months. And that'll kind of time with the construction of the bridge itself. So once those soils are settled out, bridge is constructed, then as you can see, we'll put traffic on the main line, we'll construct the west side, the 5-legged roundabout, and proceed towards finishing the entire project. So I hope that kind of makes it a little clearer. The time frame that we're going to be on that temporary surface and that will be paved is probably 2.5 to 3 months to allow us to get that settlement out of the embankment areas and get the bridge built. So I hope that answers it.
Thank you. All right, our next question is from Susie again, and her question is, how far south will the widening happen in this phase? She lives on the far west side of the South Side Estates and was wondering if the sound wall will be extended as the widening happens. The little fence erected by the builder doesn't block the sound as well as the concrete wall. So I'm gonna go over to Kathy first for that.
You bet. The project is expected to widen down past the end of the large concrete wall. And if, again, that red box kind of shows the bottom or the south end of our project. At that point, the 4 lanes will neck down to 2 lanes, and it'll go into Airport Road, which is currently out there now. So that's about how far the widening occurs. I don't exactly know where Southside Estates is, but we don't plan to build any noise walls. I understand what you're saying when you say the little fence or the existing shorter walls don't block the sound as well. And just as a note of explanation, those walls were built after our 2006 reevaluation because those subdivisions basically got platted after that time. And then the city is responsible for determining noise mitigation. And the city did require a short noise barrier for the development, but it was, it helps, but it doesn't help as much. And at that point, those shorter walls, you'd have to talk to the city about those. We don't have any involvement in them. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Kathy. And Susie did reply and say that Southside Estates is the dirt triangle at the south end of the red.
And thank you for that clarification. And I think this photo is a few years old. I'm not sure exactly when we obtained it from, but it does show that that newer area, when residences are built after the roadway is there, then the highway department doesn't come back in and justify putting in the noise wall. It's more the local government who's approving that residential development. And it's considered known and existing conditions at that time. So therefore it's up to the city or the individuals to try to live with the conditions or mitigate them on their own, not on the highway.
Perfect, thank you. All right, our next question is, will a concrete barrier between northbound and southbound traffic on the bypass be erected in order to avoid head-on collisions? I'm gonna ask Joe to answer this one first.
Yes, so I believe I'm gonna turn this over to Don. Don should have this question.
Well, or this is Kathy, if I could offer. There are no plans right now to install a concrete barrier on that 9-foot paved median that's in the center of the bypass. That was in the original plans, and I defer to MDT on this, but there are no plans that I'm aware of to install a concrete barrier between the two opposing directions. And Bob or John, do you have anything further, or at this time there's just no plans?
Sorry about that. I was struggling with my mute button as well. And you're correct, Kathy. At this time, this is a tangent stretch of roadway, and there's no plan to install a median barrier through this stretch.
Awesome, thank you both. At this time, it looks like we don't have any open questions, but feel free to submit any more questions into the Q&A. We are here to just answer your questions, and you can also reach us at any of the information on the screen as well if you need to touch base with us after this meeting.
And thanks everyone. This is Katie Cleats again with Big Sky Public Relations. So we have a little time left. Our team's happy to stay on until our designated time of 7 o'clock. So if folks do want to stay on the line and answer questions, we're more than happy to do so. Otherwise, as Takami was saying, you're more than welcome to email us, call us, or look at more information on the project webpage. We will be uploading this presentation and the presentation from earlier this morning. So if you have friends or neighbors who are interested in learning more and weren't able to attend today, they can watch a video or learn more. So there will be other options available. This is certainly one conversation that we are having, but not the last. And we'll be sure to be sending updates and staying in very regular communication with the community as we start to move toward that spring construction milestone.
All right, so it looks like we did get some questions come through. Rebecca is wondering if you could show again where the parking areas will be added near Valley View Drive. And I will ask Joe for this one.
Yep, so the parking will be located down along kind of that second curve of Valley View south of Foys Lake Road. So there's kind of a left turn and then a right turn in Valley View. And it'll be on the north side of that second curve between Valley View Drive and the existing underpass under the bypass for that trail. And so I believe in the plans there's going to be around 8 parking spots in that lot. So it should help get people off of Valley View and into that parking lot so they're not impacting the roadway conditions along Valley View.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, there'll actually be 9 stalls plus 1 handicap stall.
Thanks, Jim.
Perfect. And our next question is, where exactly is the new parking for Lone Pine hiking path? Wasn't familiar with that path, so I was wondering if that was what you just referred to, Joe.
It was the path coming in under the underpass. So it is the existing shared use trail that connects to Valley View. So it wasn't that specific path, I don't believe.
So Joe, this is Bob, and the parking, the Lone Pine Trail access, if everybody can see on the screen right here, There's a couple ways that it's accessed, but the parking that will be built is the one that Joe just described, located on this corner right here. The path will come out from under the tunnel and access that parking area. Then from there, residents can, or users can go a couple different directions. There's an existing larger parking area for Lone Pine up in this area, but there's also a path that comes off of this corner. So again, the parking area will be located right in here with a total of 10 stalls.
Great, thank you guys.
Hi everyone. So it looks like a couple people have dropped off, and since we are about half an hour early than what we were projecting, we'll maybe hang on for about another 5 minutes. So if you do want to put in any of those last minute questions, please feel free to do so. Our team's here, we're happy to answer them at this time, or we're also able to follow up later if that is more convenient for you.
All right, we did have a question come through. And it is basically, if you guys could go back to the schedule, one of our attendees was wondering if we could go over the construction schedule again.
You bet, Takami. So in general, our major construction will begin in March of 2021, depending on how our spring goes, and then major construction all summer in 2021, and open fully to traffic in November of 2021 is the plan. There is some work that'll have to be done in 2022, but in general, that's our final cleanup stuff, the remaining chip seal and striping and whatever is remaining for seeding. So
Great, thanks, John.
Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and close out. Pat, if you have any questions, you certainly know where to find us, and we will talk to everyone later. Thanks to all of our panelists. We really appreciate the good conversation.